Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video, we're still with talent trees in Dragonflight, but we're going to be talking about AoE and from like a Mythic Plus perspective here. So the first video was just reaction, second video is single target focus, this is going to be AoE Mythic Plus, and then I will do a critique video tomorrow, like critique things I would like to see changed or made better about the talent trees, because that's important as well. This is all just so we can give feedback, right? This is a good way to give feedback. If a dev happens to see this, that can be very helpful, or anybody else's video that has knowledge, that can be very helpful. So we're breaking it down this way, and tomorrow will be a critique. So if you have any critiques, feel free to comment them below, like not on me. I mean, you can critique me too, but any critiques on the tree, feel free to comment them below so I can read those and factor those in as well. So let's get started here talking about AoE from like a Mythic Plus perspective. I have a build made and we'll talk about it a little bit here. So if you watch the single target video, you're going to see that this Paladin side is very much the same, but we'll talk about some things that we could do differently perhaps. So obviously you have to start with Hammer of Wrath and the Retribution Crusader auras, and then we're still going to go down the right side. I am going to talk a little bit about the left side. There's some, I've been calling them left-siders. Some people who really want Dusk and Dawn and then Seal of Order to be things for Ret. And so we'll talk about that a little bit too when we get down there. But we're sticking to the right side for this. Trying to play into the Mad Paragon and then still going down to Sanctified Wrath at the bottom. And kind of sticking to the right. So this is very, very much the same. So what could we change here? So we don't have freedom. Now you don't often need freedom in Mythic Plus, but there are times you do, and this also does give you movement speed, which is notable. It increases movement speed by 30%. Unbound freedom, apparently. So you do get this. You get Blessing of Freedom plus Unbound freedom by having this. Lay on Hands is going to be more useful more often in like a Mythic Plus to save yourself, to save a teammate. You know, it is a defensive in a way. So if you're at like 2% health and you press Lay on Hands, that is kind of like a defensive, filling up your bar immediately, or saving a tank, you know, things like that. So this is going to be useful more often than not. Also want to Mythic Plus if you're the only Paladin. Having Devotion Aura also very good. So you definitely want to go on the left side, if nothing else, for those reasons. So we have to take, again, Divine Steed. Maybe this will end up being a critique to get down into the Avenging Wrath stuff. So we take that. Then we continue down the left side. We're taking Cleanse here. Now this is going to be dependent on what dungeon you're in, right? What situation you're in, whether you need a Cleanse or not. If you don't need a Cleanse, you can go down here and grab Blessing of Sacrifice. And then even then, so if you take these 2 points out here and put them from Avenging Wrath, you can grab Sacrifice and After Image, which also helps your healing. So if you're going to be off healing, for example, in a Mythic Plus run, which sometimes happens, it's not normally something you're intending to do, but that happens sometimes, and so you can do that. Or of course, if you're not cleansing, you can also go into mobility and things like that. Again, I mentioned this in the single target video. The way it's set up right now, you're choosing mobility or utility. And that's kind of just the way it is. We're still picking Avenging Wrath. We're still picking Judgment, generating Holy Power. We're picking the Judgment debuff to go into Divine Purpose. Divine Purpose is a very good AoE talent. It always has been a very good AoE talent because any free procs are really good. And this also can at least theoretically work with Path of Ruin over here on the Ret tree. Divine Purpose can, which we'll talk about when we get there. We're still taking Seal of Reprisal into Obduracy. I still can't say that. And then we're coming down here. So this is an interesting point here, because just like in single target, we're going to choose whatever does the most damage here. So Hallowed Ground increases consecration damage. Touch of Light, does that do burst damage to everything around you? Is that the best DPS? Or is Incandescence the best one? So I think this will probably be something in my critique, this particular little row here. But whatever one does the most damage, whether it's Hallowed Ground, Incandescence, or Touch of Light for AoE, that's kind of what we're going to take here. We're obviously going to choose rank 2 Avenging Wrath. Spell Warding, not something you'll always need. It's depending on the dungeon, of course. There's some dungeons that are almost all physical damage historically. So, but if there is any kind of magical damage and you can just eat a mechanic and just keep doing damn, Blessing of Spell Warding is actually a really cool thing to use here. and then Sanctified Wrath. What's good about Sanctified Wrath, I've seen some people talk about Sanctified Wrath. First of all, it's just better than Seraphim because, well, if you do get to use your Retribution aura, you get Seraphim that way, and you can get Seraphim from the ret side of the tree as well, just like our set bonuses. So Seraphim's not a good choice here. So it's, do I want Sanctified Wrath or not? What's good about Sanctified Wrath is that you do get a longer Avenging Wrath, and then you also get Judgment gives you 1 additional holy power. And if you're going to take Mad Paragon anyways, you're going to want to be pressing Judgment as much as you can, you know, for the most part, especially if it's giving you 2 holy power. So Judgment becomes just as valuable as like a Blade of Wrath, for example, right? Or a Blade of Justice, excuse me. So that's the option there. Now, if you don't want Spell Warding or the improved Blessing of Protection, you can go with the Unbreakable Spirit. That's a talent that's now live in Shadowlands. Seal of Might is always going to be something you pretty much want to take, similar to Seal of Reprisal. Seal of Crusader is also really good as well. And then, of course, Mad Paragon. So let's talk a little bit about the left side here. So there are some left-siders. And I mentioned you can already go get after him. It's just kind of with the same build right now. So you'd obviously have to take out 3 points to get all the way down there. So where would you take those out of? You could take it out of Sanctified Wrath. You could take it out of Blessing of Spell Warding and Bop. You could take it out of Mad Paragon to do that if you really wanted to. Those are just examples of what you could do. Now, what do you get here? Your Crusader Strike grants you increased primary stat for 6 seconds. Multiple applications may overlap, so you know, it can keep extending or whatever in theory. And I think it has a cap, right? It might not say a cap, but I think on live it might have a cap. Multiple stacks may overlap. I think it might have a cap, but it doesn't say so here. So whatever that cap is, because otherwise it'd be infinite, right? So the only issue here is you could very well, you could go, if you're doing a normal rotation, you would go 6 seconds without pressing Crusader Strike fairly easily, especially if you get any procs or anything, right? You could easily go 6 seconds without pressing Crusader Strike. So you would want to be manually pressing it to make sure you keep this buff. And so you are losing damage on a global to keep an overall damage buff flowing, which is an interesting playstyle. But it's like a kiss curse, right? And then, so then we have Dusk of Dawn. Dusk of Dawn itself is not that strong. So when you reach 5 Holy Power, you gain Blessing of Dawn. When you reach 0 Holy Power, you gain Blessing of Dusk. Dawn is damage and healing increased by 6% for 12 seconds. And Dusk is damage taken reduced by 4% for 12 seconds. So you're not really, as a damage dealer, you're not really going to be worried about Dusk that much, except for it is DR. So if you're about to take like a big shot of damage, like a big cast, maybe imagine the third boss in Sanguine Depths or something like that, right? And it's about to do the big damage stuff. You know, you could intentionally go to 0 Holy Power and get Blessing of Dusk. That's a good thing. DR can have situational good things. Same thing in a raid or wherever else that could have situational good things for DR, and its 6% damage is not bad for 12 seconds. But obviously what makes this powerful is the Seal of Order under it, because that on its own is not very powerful. It's not as strong as Mad Paragon, and it's not as strong as Seal of the Crusader, but Seal of Order is pretty strong. In the Dawn, your Holy Power spending abilities deal 10% increased damage and healing. In the Dusk, you have your armor's increased 10 by 10%, and Flash of Light heals for 10% more. So the defensive doesn't help you that much, only against physical damage a little bit. But you do more damage and more healing. Primarily, the damage is what's good. So you have 16% damage in Dawn. So when you get 5 Holy Power, and you'll want to be continually building to 5 Holy Power. It lasts for 12 seconds, so it's not really that hard to keep this up. But you obviously don't want to go down to 0 at any point either, because that could, that changes it to Dusk from the Dawn. You can't have both of these going at the same time. At least that's my understanding of the Legendary and Shadowlands, is that you can't have both running, so you have one or the other. If you can have both, then that changes my opinion a little bit, but not by a lot. So 16% damage over here on this side, and a little bit of a stat buff here, which is also something. It's not nothing, right? And then nothing here. This is just a heal. On the right side, now you still could have a couple of these things on the right side and still get it, right? So you either give up 2 stacks of this and a Mad Paragon. So this is your attacks have a chance to apply a debuff on your target, causing them to take 15% increased holy damage for 5 seconds. Now this is at the 3 stack, so it's 5% if you only have like one of these. So this damage and the Seal of Order damage are very similar. The Seal of Order is more permanent, obviously, because you can kind of keep your dusk, your dawn up. I mean, and this is a chance on hit kind of thing. Mad Paragon extends your Avenging Wrath, which has, multiplicative effects there. And so you will have to sim it for sure to know which one is better. But because you're giving up like multiple things, now there's other ways to generate holy power in the tree. But you're making your wings shorter, because I see a lot of people getting rid of Sanctified Wrath in order to get Seal of Order. I think it's just going to be a very interesting thing to sim down here, because it's not that this is bad, that Seal of Order is bad and Dusk of Dawn is bad. It's just that I think that everything else kind of flows with the rest of the abilities and rest of the talents better. And so if they were even, or if Dusk of Dawn was better, I'd almost just want them to buff like Mad Paragon or something like that to 1 second, or 0.75 seconds per ability, Judgment plus Hammer of Wrath, and then let us play with that, because this just doesn't flow with the rest of it very well. You can make it flow by maybe doing some different builds and stuff, but then maybe it's not as good of damage. And so I think it's like almost two different play styles in a way. And that's good to have different play styles, don't get me wrong, but you want it to flow really well with the rest of your abilities, rest of your tree and stuff like that. You don't want it to like feel weird, even though that it is like equal in damage, preferably. So this is kind of like build for AoE spec. Talk a little bit about Dusk and Dawn. Here we go. We just need to know the highest damage here for this one. And I'm going to talk about this row specifically on the critique video. Up here, we have Turn Evil. You could possibly need that in a utility situation. We're taking Rebuke because kicks are very important in Mythic Plus. Let's move over to the Retribution tree. So specifically, we're going to be talking about like the consecration powers, right? Because we're focused on AoE. We've talked about most of these powers already. I spent most of my time, I spent a large time talking on the Dusk of Dawn because I hadn't talked about that yet. And I'll spend most of my time over here talking about the AoE abilities that I haven't talked much about yet. So obviously we take Divine Storm. We still want Art of War, most likely. So I say this most likely because the way it is now with the set bonus for Ret, it's actually pretty good. It makes playing it pretty fun. So in order to do that, you have to go down here to Blade of Wrath. And you want to come down this way anyways to get Tempest of the Lightbringer and stuff, and probably Empyrean Power. So it's not a huge deal, but you want Blade of Wrath because then you want more of these resets on Ashes to Ashes, and then you take like something like Zeal again to get more of these Art of Wars from your Blade of Wrath. So like these three things, as far as Shadowlands goes, would be like mandatory. This might not be the case in Dragonflight, but like Zeal, Blade of Wrath, Ashes to Ashes are kind of things you're going to want in every single build you make. And maybe that will not end up being so in Dragonflight, but the way Shadowlands is right now, you would always want these three things. So we go down this right side. We're going to take that. We're going to grab Consecrated Blade here, off to the side from Exburg. And that's Blade of Justice casts with Art of War, shatters the earth while emerging, casting consecration on the target location, and it has its own consecration with a limit of 1. So if you manually cast consecration, you can have 2 consecrations down at once, which is kind of cool. It's going to enable some more things. Now the tuning on these consecration abilities, from what I've heard from people with alpha, is not very good, but tuning can always be fixed. The important thing is that these abilities are actually cool and feel good. Obviously they'll feel better if they do more damage, right? So we need to work on tuning for these. If they're going to make consecration this big thing, we definitely need to worry about tuning. And yeah, so hopefully that can be tuned to feel good. We have consecration doing 10% more here. So we have 2 consecrations down doing more damage. That's potentially a good thing. We come down here, we grab Empyrean Power. Fires of Justice is another one, but Empyrean Power is probably going to be the better choice since we don't have to choose between Blade of Wrath and Empyrean Power like we do in Shadowlands. We can actually have both of those for AoE / Mythic Plus. Then we grab Tempest of the Lightbringer. That's the same as like the legendary effect where your Divine Storm shoots forward and does extra damage. We grab Healing Hands here just so we can get to the bottom, and we'll talk about the bottom when we get there. So on this side, I see a lot of people grabbing Condemning Blade here, and that increases the critical strike chance of your Blade of Justice. It's understandable because you have Exburg, here anyways, so it's definitely understandable that some people are doing that. But 5% crit on your blade, in my opinion, is just not that good. When reducing cooldown of your judgment by 1 second actually synergizes with Mad Paragon. So if like Dusk of Dawn and Seal of Order end up being like the go-tos, then I could see taking Condemning Blade here and going down and grabbing Shield that way, because we have to, the way it's set up now, we have to grab Shield of Vengeance to get down to this like juicy stuff in the middle. But with this Mad Paragon build, I can't see a way where Timely Judgment's not a little bit better than Condemning Blade here, because we get to cast more judgments. Our judgments are all sorts of empowered and stuff like that, increases damage dealt, all these judgment talents. So it just makes it just a generally good talent anyways, but especially if you are into Mad Paragon. We have to grab Improved Crusader Strike to get down, higher damage dealt by judgment. We just talked about that. Zeal, we already talked about what Zeal is all about. Calm Before the Storm, this is just causing your Divine Storm just to do tons more damage, from 50% more damage from your Consecration for 8 seconds. So basically you can keep this up at all times. We go down here, we're grabbing Inner Power. Every 10 seconds in combat, you gain 1 Holy Power. The other option is Sanctification. Consecration period, periodic damage has a chance. Yeah, this is actually the one you would want here. I'm sorry, I had the wrong one selected. Sanctification. So your Consecration periodic damage has a chance to grant 1 Holy Power. So since you're running the double Consecration with Consecrated Blade, you're going to run Sanctification here, and we should be swimming in Holy Power, essentially, which is an argument against Sanctified Wrath, frankly, if you didn't want to take that. We also then come down here to Longarm of the Law. Now, this is simply, some people have been against Longarm of the Law, but it's either that or Hand of Hindrance to get down here to the left. And like I said, in Shadowlands turns, we're always going to want to come to the left for Ashes to Ashes. Maybe this will not be the case in Dragonflight, but as far as now, you're going to have to... Longarm of the Law is a great talent anyways, but I'm pretty much always going to take it, especially over Hand of Hindrance, to get down here the way they're set up right now. We're also going to take Exorcism here because this has some consecration abilities as well, and we haven't talked about Exorcism yet on any of the videos, not in depth at least. Blasts the target with Holy Light, causing % of attack power holy damage, and burns the target for an additional 20% of attack power holy damage every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. Applies the damage over time effect to nearby enemies. I assume that means all nearby enemies. If the target is standing within your consecration, and stuns undead targets for 5 seconds. So, obviously, anything against undead, we're going to be very strong against with all these abilities. So, Exorcism just does a little bit of ticking damage on anything in your consecration, essentially. So, just a little bit more damn. I've heard this is tuned very badly as well in the alpha, but again, tuning can be fixed. So, we want to, the critique here should be, you know, to make Exorcism stronger, not that it's stupid. It's a cool idea to exercise the demon and then have everything around it burn with it, right? As like a splash. That's actually kind of cool. We just need to make that stronger there. And then let's go back up to the middle here and talk about this. So I have Wake of Ashes here, obviously. That's one of our primary abilities these days. And then you can go down. Some people just want to take Execution Sense because it's a cool ability. I don't think it's really needed for Mythic Plus. And then Truce Wake's actually really good for that. And frankly, so let's say they don't tune things very well. You might be choosing between like Truce Wake and Exorcism, right? It's burning with your Wake of Ashes going to do more, or with your Path of Ruin going to do more, or is Exorcism going to do more? It might just be a tuning thing there on which one you take. But yeah, so Truce Wake's probably another option there where you're just taking whatever one's stronger. I actually have Path of Ruin selected here. I think this synergizes really well with Divine Purpose from the Paladin class tree. So this is something I got wrong on a different video, but this is actually a spender, and it's radiant damage. So if you don't know what radiant damage is, which I fully didn't, honestly, it's holy plus fire. So it does gain the effects of being a holy damage ability, right? It gets all the good things and like none of the bad things, essentially. Like it takes all the good aspects of holy and fire, essentially, from what I read about it, about radiant damage. And so Path of Ruin, it does a good amount of damage, not as much as a regular Wake of Ashes, but it only has a 15-second cooldown, and in theory, it should be able to benefit from Divine Purpose. Your Holy Power abilities have a 50% chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and deal 20% increased damage and healing. So it would do more damage on a divine purpose as well. You would always want a divine purpose. If you get a divine purpose proc, you would want to do your Path of Ruin instead of like a divine storm, for example, almost all the time, because it's just a very powerful ability, and you could use that as a spender. Some people are trying to make this work for single target. I don't think it synergizes very well with like Executioner's Will and stuff like that. But this is a very strong ability, and I could definitely see it being used for AoE. If nothing else, for like cleave fights, like 2 to 5 targets, it could probably be used. But probably for all AoE, it'll probably be a pretty solid spender to use every 15 seconds. And something to kind of supplement just only spamming Divine Storm as a spender. You can also use Path of Ruin as a spender as well, at least potentially. I think that'd be pretty cool if that ends up being the case. When we go down here, as I mentioned, you kind of have to go down this left side if you want to, if you're a believer that the Shadowlands style is going to be the thing where we want Seraphim procs. We don't want to take Seraphim, we want Seraphim procs. Then we take Virtuous Command, we go down to Ashes. Final Reckoning's probably going to be good because it's just like some instant massive AoE, and then you could hit them with a Path of Ruin, hit them with Divine Storms, and just do a ton of damage to them afterwards. And it's only, of course, a 1 minute cooldown. So you Final Reckoning everything. I mean, let's just read it. Call down Heavenly Energy, dealing % of attack power, holy damage to all targets. Yeah, so it's still all targets. It's still, not capped or whatever, right? So this is generally going to be good. Obviously, the smaller the pack you pull, the less good it's going to be. We grab Divine Toll here just because it's an instant 5 holy power on an AoE situation. One thing to mention about Divine Toll that a lot of people are missing is we do not have Ringing Clarity in this talent as of now. I read something on the Prot post that they're thinking about putting Ringing Clarity into this. If they put a high level Ringing Clarity into this, this is going to be a take for every single situation. That's single target and multi-target. As of now, I'm taking it just because it's a free 5 holy power. So let's say you spend all the way down to 0, or you just start a pull, you just Divine Toll, you have 5 holy power, and you can do whatever the heck you want, right? That's just a very strong thing to do every minute, every single pull. Start off with 5 holy power if you choose to. On the right side here, so I did not go to Divine Resonance. I don't think it's a bad thing to get free judgments, which help your Mad Paragon. I just think that it's basically, I don't think it's as good as Final Reckoning on its own every minute, and I do not think that it's better than improving your Avenging Wrath. So that's just kind of my thoughts there. It's not that Divine Resonance is bad, and singles. So if you end up taking this for single target because they add Ring and Clarity, then you may take Divine Resonance as well. So Relentless Inquisitor, we grab this. This is just a solid legendary in Shadowlands. It was good in the first patch. It's good now. It's not amazing, but it's a solid legendary. And then we take that because and Templar's Vindication does nothing for multi-target. So it's only for bosses and only for bosses that are single target. And then I actually have Avenging Wrath Might here. So everyone is very high on Crusade. And I understand why. And I think in a lot of times for single target, it might end up being the better thing. And there's one thing to note too about this node. This node's going to depend highly on the stats of your character. If your character has 30% haste and 5% crit, for example, somehow, right? You have 30% haste, 5% crit. Well, then Might is always going to be better than Crusade. If your character has 30% crit and 10% haste, then Crusade might be better pretty much every time, right? And so stat weights are going to matter a lot too, like your own personal character stat weights on this decision. And let's talk a little bit about the difference between them, okay? So Crusade is Call Upon Light in beginning of Crusade, increasing your haste by 3% for 25 seconds. Each holy power spent during Crusade increases haste by additional 3%, maximum 10 stacks, so maximum of 30%. Avenging Wrath, as known, also grants 3% damage per sec, so 30% damage, up from 20% damage. So you get a 10% increased damage and 30% increased haste. So it's just like a super haste with also a little bit of damage. And it modifies. The important thing to know is that these are modifying your Avenging Wrath. And then Might, what Might does is it gives you the crit chance, the 20% crit chance that you have now on live servers. So when you pop your Avenging Wrath right now, you have this crit baked into it, right? To have your normal Avenging Wrath, just your normal Avenging Wrath, no Crusade or anything like that, you would need to have Might. So I think might actually be better on a base level for Mythic Plus, because you're going to want that crit. Ramping up in Mythic Plus pulls doesn't feel as good, especially when some stuff dies earlier than others. Some stuff might be dead before you get to your max stacks, depending on how high your key is and stuff like that, right? But with Might, you just get that crit, and you're just dealing damage right away. Critical strike damage right away. So I think Might could be better in a lot of situations than Crusade, but specifically in Mythic Plus for the trash balls and stuff, not having to build up your power could be a lot more advantageous, I believe, and that's why I went with Might here. Now, if it ends up being Crusade, I'm not going to be shocked here, but I think Might, the 20% crit's a lot, and not to have that 20% crit, it could be an issue compared to how Paladins work right now, because you have to understand you're not getting any crit from this base Avenging Wrath. Call upon Light and become an Avatar of Retribution, increasing your damage and healing by 20% for 20 seconds, and then allowing Hammer of Wrath to be castable. And then this combines with other Avenging Wrath abilities. So I would love to see Might just baked back into Avenging Wrath, maybe putting it with rank 2. I would love to see that, and then Crusade being its own talent. I would love that, honestly, and that might be my critique. But I think right now you might have to take Might in certain situations, including Mythic Plus. So that's my thoughts on that. Again, I'm having so much fun with these, going over these and thinking of potential builds from all kinds of things. Let's talk about one thing real quick that I didn't take here, which is Consecrated Ground. This is going to be something I kind of critique too. Maybe moving this to combine it with something, because your consecration is 15% larger and enemies within it are slowed. So this is actually like a valid Mythic Plus talent. But the problem is it's not doing any extra damage for you at all, and you have to give up a damage thing to get it. Because we're taking Longarm of the Law to get down here anyways. We have to take a non-damage ability, where they're taking like a defensive, or we're taking a heal to get down on this side. And then, to get down on the right side. To get down on the left side, we have to take either Hand of Hindrance or Longarm of the Law. So none of those are damaged, but you have to take one anyways. The only thing you can do is subtract damage if you want to get... like you'd have to get rid of Zeal or something, right? Or to get this, Consecrated Ground, you have to give up something fairly substantial, and so I don't think that feels good at all. But I think this is a good idea for a talent. I would also say with the 15% larger, and again, I'll talk about this more extensively tomorrow. But I would love for the devs, if any dev happens to watch this video, I would love for you to think about the size of like a 2 or 3 pull pack. I'm not asking you to consider MDI pulls, but a 2 or 3 pull pack and a Mythic Plus, and think about how big the consecration needs to be for that in a realistic situation, where even if you're not kiting, you're kind of moving the mobs or LOSing around a corner. Think about how big the consecration needs to be there. Does it need to be 20% larger, 25% larger? I think 15 is just a little bit too small here, if I'm being completely honest. So definitely consider that as well. So that's it for this one. This is, again, an example of what I think an M plus build will look like with the current talents. Hopefully I talked enough about the consecration abilities. That's kind of what I wanted to mostly talk about in this video, and the Dusk of Dawn, just because I haven't covered it yet. Once again, tomorrow I will have a critique of the tree, some things I would like to see changed or moved, not buffed, but kind of buffed. Like I was just talking about buffing Consecrated Ground. It's not buffing damage, but buffing the power of it, I guess, the size of it, and like just stuff like that. So that's what I'll have tomorrow, is critique. And at some point I'm going to go over, I actually didn't get a chance to watch it live. I'm going to go over, as long as he posted on YouTube or whatever, Liquid Maximum from Liquid. I'll go over his talk with the Rep Paladins, Bolas, and Narcoles, and see if I agree or disagree with them. If so, that would be either like tomorrow night or into the weekend somewhere. So I'm having a lot of fun with this, guys. Hopefully you're psyched about this as well. I think this AoE talent thing feels a lot better than the single target one. And if they just, like I said, if they can get the tuning correct on consecration, which they're going to have to. If they're going to make consecration a thing, they're going to have to tune it correctly and the abilities around it correctly. So if they tune that correctly, I think that'll feel really, really good. And then if they can just move or combine a few of these points, some of these consecration abilities, just so we don't have to, like, we're giving up so much in every situation. It kind of sucks. So I would like to see that happen as well. So, that's it for this one. We'll have critique tomorrow, so feel free to come in for that, because I know some people are like you know, they don't like hearing all these positive things because they want things to be better. They want things to be better. And I totally hear you on that. There's tons of things to improve on this tree. There's utility things to improve. There's things to move around. There's things that need to be stronger. I totally get all that. And I'll be coming with that tomorrow. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.